The cake was still warm from the bakery when my nephew picked it up with both hands and dropped it straight onto the floor. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The white frosting smeared across the tiles. My name, which had been carefully written in gold icing, was completely ruined. Then my nephew, Daniel, looked at me and laughed. "Go ahead," he said coldly. "Eat it off the ground." I felt my entire body go numb. That cake wasn't just dessert. It was supposed to be the symbol of everything I had survived. I was 31 years old, and after years of working, studying late at night, and paying my own tuition, I had finally graduated with the degree I had dreamed about since I was a teenager. My mother had cried when she saw me in my graduation gown. My sister, Claire, had hugged me and said she was proud. At least, that's what I thought. That afternoon, our family gathered at my mother's house for a small celebration. There were balloons in the living room, flowers on the table, and photographs of me everywhere. I remember looking around and thinking, I finally made it. Then Daniel walked into the room. He was 19, loud, confident, and always treated like he could do no wrong. He looked at my graduation cap and smirked. "So this is what everyone is celebrating?" I smiled awkwardly. "Yes, I finally finished." He shrugged. "Must be nice. Everyone keeps acting like you're some kind of genius." My smile disappeared. I looked toward my sister. Claire heard him, but instead of correcting him, she simply laughed. "Daniel is just jealous," she said. I tried to ignore it. I didn't want to argue on my graduation day. Then my mother brought out the cake. Everyone gathered around as she placed it on the table. The words, "Congratulations, Emma," were written across the top. I took out my phone to capture the moment, and that's when Daniel stepped forward. Before I could understand what he was doing, he grabbed the cake. He held it for a second, then dropped it. The crash seemed louder than it really was. My heart sank. Daniel stared at the mess and smiled. "Now your celebration matches reality." I looked at my sister. I expected her to be shocked. Instead, she whispered, "Emma, don't make a scene." That sentence hurt more than the ruined cake. But what I didn't know that day was that the cake wasn't the worst thing Daniel would destroy. And I had no idea that within 48 hours, I would discover a secret that would completely change the way my family saw him. I left the party without saying goodbye. I sat in my car outside my mother's house, still wearing my graduation dress. My hands were shaking. I kept replaying the moment in my mind. The cake hitting the floor, Daniel laughing, my sister telling me not to make a scene. I wasn't angry because of the cake. I was hurt because nobody defended me. I drove home and cried for nearly an hour. Then I noticed something. My phone had been recording the entire celebration. I had forgotten to stop the video after taking the picture. I watched it again, and this time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Just before Daniel picked up the cake, Claire had quietly said something to him. The audio wasn't perfectly clear, but I could hear one sentence. "Just make sure she leaves before Sunday." I froze. Before Sunday? Why did my sister want me gone? I listened again. Then I heard Daniel say, "Don't worry, she won't find out." My stomach tightened. Find out what? I called my sister. She didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. That night I couldn't sleep. The next morning I received a message from my mother. "Please don't come over today. We need some space." I stared at the message for a long time. Then another message arrived. This one was from Daniel. "You should really stop asking questions." That was when I knew something was wrong. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't even going to confront them. Instead, I decided to find the truth. I checked an old family group chat and discovered that several messages had been deleted. Luckily, I still had some screenshots from months earlier, and one conversation caught my attention. It was between Claire and Daniel. They had been discussing money. My sister had recently told everyone that Daniel was struggling financially and needed help with college expenses. My mother had been giving him money. Even I had helped once. But the messages showed something completely different. Daniel had been secretly using that money to buy expensive electronics and resell them online. That wasn't even the biggest secret. The real shock came when I found bank statements that my mother had accidentally left inside an old folder at my house. There were repeated transfers from her account, thousands of dollars, and the payments weren't going toward Daniel's education. They were going toward something else, a new business account. The account was connected to my sister. Suddenly, everything made sense. Claire had been telling the family that Daniel needed financial support. but she and Daniel had been using the money to build a small online business behind everyone's backs. And there was one more thing. They had been planning to use my mother's savings for the next stage. They needed her to sell part of her property. My mother had recently told them she wanted to leave that property to me, because I had been the one helping her with bills and appointments for years. That's why they wanted me out of the picture. My graduation wasn't just an excuse to humiliate me, it was part of a plan. They wanted me angry. They wanted me to distance myself from the family. They wanted everyone to believe I was jealous and difficult. And once I was gone, they could control my mother's decisions. For the first time since the cake hit the floor, I stopped crying. I smiled, not because I was happy, because I finally understood. I didn't expose them immediately. That was the hardest part. I wanted to walk into my sister's house and tell everyone what I knew. But instead, I collected everything. The messages, the bank transfers, the business documents, the conversations. And most importantly, I found proof that my mother had never agreed to give them the money they were taking. I made copies. Then I called a family meeting. Everyone arrived at my mother's house that Sunday. Claire looked annoyed when she saw me. "I thought you were giving us space," she said. I calmly sat down. I was. Daniel rolled his eyes. "Then why are you here?" I looked at him. "To finish my graduation celebration." He laughed. "There isn't a cake this time." "No," I said, "there isn't." Then I placed a folder on the table. The room became quiet. I opened it. One document at a time. I showed my mother the transfers from her account. Her face changed. Then I showed her the messages. Claire's smile disappeared. Daniel stopped looking at me. My mother turned toward them. "What is this?" Claire immediately tried to explain. "Mom, it's not what you think." I didn't interrupt. I didn't insult her. I simply let her own messages speak. Then I showed my mother the business documents, the money, the secret account, the plan to convince her to sell the property. Everything. Daniel finally stood up. "You went through our stuff." I looked at him calmly. "No. You left your truth behind." Nobody spoke. My mother was devastated. She had trusted them. She had defended Daniel. She had even blamed me for being too sensitive. Now she finally understood why I had been hurt. She turned to Daniel. "Is this why you ruined her graduation?" He looked down. For once he had nothing clever to say. My sister started crying. She apologized. She said they were desperate. She said they never meant to hurt me. But some apologies arrive after the damage has already changed everything. My mother refused to sell the property. She also stopped giving Daniel money, without knowing exactly where it was going. The business was eventually shut down, because it had been built on money they couldn't honestly explain. And Daniel? He never apologized about the cake. Not directly, but months later he sent me a message. It simply said, "I was wrong about you." I stared at those words for a long time. Then I deleted the message. Not because I hated him, because I didn't need his approval anymore. A few weeks later, I bought myself another graduation cake. A small one, nothing fancy, just white frosting and gold letters. This time I ate it in my own apartment, alone. And somehow it tasted better than any cake I had ever had. Because that cake wasn't about graduation anymore. It was about choosing myself. I learned something that day. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the same people who expect us to stay silent. But silence doesn't mean weakness. The strongest thing you can do is step back, collect the truth, and let reality speak for itself. I didn't destroy my family. I didn't need revenge. I simply stopped protecting people from the consequences of their own choices. And in the end, that was enough. Because my graduation wasn't ruined. It was simply delayed by a painful lesson. And the lesson was this: never let someone else's cruelty convince you that your achievement is worth less. I earned that degree. I earned that celebration. And most importantly, I earned the right to walk away from anyone who refused to celebrate my happiness.